Hello, everyone. This is something I don't usually do, but there was an episode of the Unslaved podcast, episode 227, if you're interested in watching it, that had to do with cryptos. And after watching it, there was a lot of things I agreed with, and there are a lot of things that I actually disagreed with. And I felt the need to actually provide a rebuttal to some of the issues brought up in that episode. And if you've never heard of the Enslaved podcast, it is not free. It actually costs $13 a month. But if you're interested in the truth, it's the best $13 a month that you can spend. Highly recommend it. Um, and so for the rest of this video, I'll actually be addressing um, Michael Tessarion, David Whitehead, Chance Garton, and Dylan Sakashio. Hope I pronounced that right. Um, uh, just so everyone's aware, these are the people that were on that podcast and discussing crypto at that time. So, you four gentlemen, hello. This is definitely meant to be a respectful critique. All of you are, you know, real men that I respect. Dylan, I actually haven't heard of you until that podcast, but I'm sure with the company that you're involved with, you're good people. And Chance, I've loved the other episodes that you've been on in the Enslaved podcast for sure. I think you've been on at three at this point, maybe more. But I loved all of them. And of course, David, Michael, yeah, I'm wearing the shirt. Um, this is literally the only shirt that I have that has words on it. I don't care to wear anything else other than my appreciation for freedom, basically. Um, so definitely happy to wear the T-shirt to represent the enslaved community for everything that it is worth. Um, so I come at this with the spirit of I believe some things were gotten wrong on what blockchain is, on what crypto is, and in the spirit of truth and seeking truth and getting to the bottom of the matter. Yeah, I wanted to make this video, and I'm definitely open to counter critique, whatever. I'm here for the truth. Consciousness is the only game in town, so to speak. Um, So where am I even coming at this from? Why am I even bothering to make this video? Well, I've spent the last 10 years of my life um, researching finance purely from an educational perspective, purely from an academic background. I have a degree in finance. And even before I got the degree, I was reading financial newsletters. And because I was fascinated in resource management, like what resources do we have on this planet? Where are they going? How much do we have left? What do we have available? I found that interesting. And the markets that surrounded that and actually made the world move. What matters? What actually has value? That's what I was interested in. And very recently, as I'd say a little bit over 6 months ago, I entered the crypto space, both from an investment perspective but also from a developer perspective. I started taking courses and starting to deep dive into what the blockchain technology is. Um, and that's why after I saw the podcast, I was like, if I were to sum up in one sentence what my critique is, what my concern is, I believe the baby has been thrown out with the bathwater. And I will be more than happy to provide evidence for what I'm saying. I'm not just going to make dogmatic claims. Um, and definitely open to different sources of information as well. So let me go ahead and get started. There's a way I've organized this, um, and I wanted to start out with the points that I agreed on, just so you know where I stand and where the actual disagreements are going to lie in the future. So the fiat financial system that we currently have, yes, is a house of cards, and it is a game of musical chairs. I mean, most businesses, they don't even pay out in pensions anymore. They pay you get a 401k. So you're literally your retirement plan is tied to the stock market, basically. Well, what if the stock market crashed right after you retired? And whatever you saved $1 million. Oh, sorry, it's $300,000. Good luck. And to me, I've always thought of that as a very extreme metaphor for the game of musical chairs. Did you retire at the right time? You know, we'll see. Good luck. So yeah, there are a lot of the other idea of being able to inflate the currency, inflate the value of our currency away. So yeah, a lot of weaknesses in the current system. Got that completely on board. Definitely agree with gold and silver. Using those to reduce your risk. I definitely have some. I have for years at this point. And if you think about it, I've always thought of this debt reversal trick. Imagine, if you will, you took out a mortgage for a $300,000 house, and suddenly the US dollar loses its world reserve currency status, and massive inflation starts going. Well, what if that $300,000 loan that you took out, and this is an extreme example, what if it suddenly costs a gallon of milk? Because it's just dollars are worthless at this point. Well, you could take your silver coin down to the market and go ahead and buy the rest of your house with it. So I bring up that point to say, why do we invest in? I mean, you obviously all work with dollars. I pay for my enslaved subscription in dollars through PayPal. But I also have I own some stocks, I own some bonds, I own metals for sure, I own some crypto. Why do I have all these different things? And I'll be from a finance 101 perspective. Finance 101. The best way to reduce your risk is diversification. And I think that's true in nature too. Like the more diversified a species is, the more likely it is to survive a catastrophe. Likewise, the more diversified you keep your possessions or assets, whatever you want to call it, label it, the better off you'll be. You might say, well, I want to keep all my money under a mattress. Well, if your house burns down, then you may have wanted to put it in a bank. But what if the bank seizes all your money? Well, then you would have liked to have money under your mattress. You see, so there's all these different things that are unforeseeable that can happen that can really destroy your wealth. So, and diversification is really the way to go there. So the next agreed point is, yeah, you could lose everything in cryptos. Take just the whole powers that be out of the equation. Just the pure financial risk. Just investing in any crypto at all. Yeah, you could lose everything. I don't have, when I have originally invested in crypto, I did not put more than 5% of my total net worth into crypto. The idea when you put money into crypto, if you do it at all, is you have to be okay with losing everything tomorrow morning. Because if you aren't willing to accept that, then don't get in crypto. And that's with me being like okay with investing in crypto, with actually believing in the technology. Just to put things into perspective there. And of course, the last agreed point, yeah, the architects of control will try to use this emerging technology to control us all. Of course they will. When have they not? Why would this be an exception, right? So I completely understand there. All right, so moving on to the points of contention that I wanted to bring up. So I know that throughout the podcast, I think it was Chance and Dylan that were, you mentioned a few times, the idea of convenience. And I was asking myself the question as I was listening to your discussion. Well, what's the difference between convenience and value? Where does that line get crossed? And it's convenient to have electricity, but I most certainly value my electricity. I'm using it to record this video right now, right? And then what is wealth? You guys did a very good job of discussing currency, value, wealth. Very important to define your terms in discussions like these, because I definitely agree that most people don't understand what those terms mean to them even. But I wanted to review it. It's not that I disagreed with the definition so much, but I really wanted to nail down what I mean by wealth when I start talking, so we know we're all on the same page there. And then I wanted to talk to you about what crypto really is and what blockchain really is. And I'm going to do my best to explain it in a, in the simplest terms as possible. Um, I think it was Einstein said, you don't really understand something unless you can explain it in simple terms. So we're about to find out if I actually understand it or not. And I also believe, yeah, like I said, the architects of control will attempt to use this against us, but I believe they will ultimately fail. Now, I will explain why I think that, and then we'll see. We'll see what you think about all that. And then I want to talk to you about the future of blockchain technologies, where it's all going, and provide a little bit of insight there. Okay. All right. So wealth and value versus convenience is the first topic I wanted to discuss. So when it comes to wealth, what possession is the most valuable? Now, in my opinion, it's your time, because followed closely by health. Because if you're unhealthy and you have time, you at least have the time to become healthy again. But if you have no time, you're just dead. Now, I would say after time is my health. Oh, and one more point on time. Time, when we give up our time for something, we are expressing through our actions what we value. So whether or not you choose to go to a Justin Bieber concert, which I could care less about, and some people value that. Values are subjective. I'm making this video right now, so and I clearly value communicating this information to you on some level, and getting this information out there. Right. So what you give your time to is showing what you value. And next to that, I would argue that your health is your next most valuable possession. And a close third is knowledge. Now, why do I say that? Well, you could have all the resources around you. You could have food surrounding you. You could have all the oil in the world, all the sun in the sky, all the electricity in the molten core of the earth. But if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know which plants are edible and which ones are poisonous, you're not going to make it that far. So knowledge on a very basic level is necessary for survival. So obviously I value knowledge, and just from a practical standpoint, but from a consciousness standpoint, I value it on a completely different level, on a completely philosophical level as well. And then I would say in a fourth place is your actual resources, because obviously that matters. The trains need to keep moving, so to speak, and resources need to keep flowing. We need the sun, we need the oceans, we need those raw materials to keep life up and running. So on a very basic level, these are the things that I would say comprise wealth to me. But wealth is ultimately what you value as well. So some people, I know, Chance, you brought up the non-fungible token and the $300 million painting. Yes, absurd. I would not spend $300 million on a JPEG, which is literally what happened. And the joke is that you can just take a snapshot of it. The only real value that the non-fungible token was adding to that equation, which the art community picked this up for some reason. This is not the use case for non-fungible tokens. It just so happened that's just how it worked. The idea is that the blockchain is saying, this is authentically the original, if there is such a thing in the digital format. Of course, anybody could take a snapshot of this, but that had enough meaning, enough value to the end user for them to spend $300 million on. But on a side note, just take that out of the equation. Artwork in and of itself, from a financial perspective, has been a store of value for centuries. The super wealthy, I'm certainly not rich enough to diversify into paintings, but the super wealthy do. And they do spend a lot of money on paintings and art. Now, you might say, well, there's no real value in that, because what does the art do for you? And that's where I come back to what I'm trying to argue about. What is truly valuable? Well, if it matters to someone, it matters. It's a subjective thing. So The wealth issue is one where I say, okay, well, if you're getting what you want out of it or what you need out of it, okay, to each their own. And there's a reason why I'm saying all this and laboring on these issues, because um, once I get to the arguments later on in the presentation, the background will make more sense. So, what is technology? Well, on a very simple level, it's technical knowledge of nature. So even a chair is technology. I think we take that for granted, that something like a chair is technology. But the idea that, hey, you could put four posts up and a flat surface on top of that and use physics to your advantage, so you don't have to, bend over on the floor and pick everything up every time. That is something that's valuable to a lot of people, including myself. And you could say, well, that's just a convenience. And I'm ultimately going to say, well, no, because I think if you value it, if you're willing to give up your time to go up to the Justin Bieber concert and pay for the ticket, you valued it. So I kind of wanted to get rid of this idea of convenience for the sake of this presentation. And you were talking about not taking responsibility, Chance and Dylan, talking about not taking responsibility for one's money, and it's for the sake of convenience. And I say to that, well, if you understand all the risks and you make the decision to go into the crypto space, then okay, it's not. I don't think that's irresponsible. I think that you've made a choice. You made a calculated risk. So I think it's 20 to 40,000 people die every year from car wrecks, right? But I'm gonna drive my car. I have an 8-month daughter, and I drive her in a car, knowing full well that the risks are involved. Now, am I not taking responsibility? I say, well, no, I'm aware of the risks, but I choose to make that decision anyway. Now, in contrast to the people that you were talking about, where they're mortgaging their houses to get into the crypto space, they are fools. I have no other way to put it. Because throw Bitcoin out of the equation, throw cryptos out of the equation. If you mortgage your house to invest in something other than yourself, then you are a fool. I can at least get into it if you were to say, I'm mortgaging my house to invest in me, to start my own business, to follow my life plan, take that risk and do my own thing. I'll buy into that because, you're putting your life on the line for what you believe in. And you're believing in yourself, and that's probably the best thing that you can do. So yeah, I make this point. Trading convenience or value for risk is not irresponsible if you're aware and accept the risks. And I've already touched on this, but the diversification is your best solution to risk management. Like I said before, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Before moving on, I wanted to make a note about technology. So imagine if we knew how to take advantage of the electromagnetic field that comes from the Earth's molten core. That was part of Tesla's technology, was to say, hey, we could have wireless electric devices. And you could go out into the forest and you could do whatever you wanted to. You could have your own lights and who knows, air conditioning. Who knows what it could be. But we don't know how. I put that in quotation marks because, a few years ago, phone companies low-key started talking about wireless charging like it was no big deal. And I'm like, seriously? It took 100 years of suppressing the guy's technology, but we're finally coming out and saying, wireless charging, it can happen. Don't worry about it. Come on. That's why I say technology, once you have that technical understanding of nature, that's so valuable. You're able to leverage resources that are already there in ways that you could never do before. And why I'm bringing this up is I'm basically prefacing what the blockchain technologies that are coming online. What I think that you miss the most in that discussion in episode 227 on Enslaved was how much value blockchain is bringing to the table. I have this coming up later, but basically saying that cryptocurrencies is the only thing that you can do on blockchain is the same thing as saying that email is the only thing you can do on the internet. there's a whole other universe unfolding, which I will make the case for, during this episode. That's why I'm saying you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, I believe. Dial it back. Realize there's still risk, absolutely, but don't keep yourself out of the space. So, yeah, I gotta make the case for that. Oh, and by the way, part of what the value that Bitcoin is bringing to the table, one of the largest transactions made, it was like $330 million. Guess how much it costs? 33 cents. That was it. Visa and MasterCard are dead, and they don't even know it yet. The only reason why this hasn't picked up yet is because of adoption. The adoption isn't there. One legitimate critique, Chance, that you brought up was the currency fluctuation for Bitcoin. Like you could lose 10% over the weekend, right? Oh man, imagine if the government said, we're gonna lay down the law and we're gonna ban Bitcoin. It could drop 50% over the weekend if that under the right conditions. I mean, absolutely. Bitcoin is very volatile. And because of that, it is an inferior currency at this point. Now, it may be true. Maybe Bitcoin never gets adopted to a rate that would make it not as volatile. That could definitely happen. But if it does, then yes, the volatility would naturally decrease. That will happen if adoption continues. So I think last year, or I think we're almost in market cap for the US dollar, $40 trillion because of the COVID stuff. It was just insane how much money we're spending now. Well, or how much money we're printing. Well, the market cap for Bitcoin is only $1 trillion and some change. So you're talking about a tiny little wee lad against a giant, a 2 to 3% fraction of what the US dollar is. So yeah, I mean, this giant bully of the US dollar, it just moves Bitcoin around like it's nothing, because it is nothing compared to the market cap of the US dollar. But eventually, the US dollar is a national currency, and the world reserve currency, albeit that. But Bitcoin and other cryptos are global currencies. So they have the potential to be much larger. And if they're superior, what do I mean by that? Well, if you can transact the 24/7 service, you don't have to wait through Saturdays and Sundays. Cheaper by far compared to all the other financial services that you have. And instead of waiting days for something to post, the transactions post in minutes. So this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's coming our way with blockchain. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the case for Bitcoin. It looks like I talked about some of this stuff already. The legitimate critique that you had, Chance. And again, maybe it doesn't get adopted. That's a legitimate risk. And, Bitcoin would eventually drop to something near zero. Already discussed the transaction costs. So currently you have supreme anonymity. So right now, you can go right now on the blockchain network. It's all open source. It's all public record. You could go to look at every single address on the blockchain for Bitcoin, and you could see how much Bitcoin is in each address right now. Well, you have no idea who owns that address. You have no idea who created it. And there's millions of transactions going on all the time. And no one can track it. Nobody knows who's doing what. Now, what if governments could pass laws to say, hey, we need to tax you. We need to make sure that you are who you are. And there's some exchanges that exchange dollars for Bitcoins and other cryptos that are doing that where you have to verify who you are to meet those legal standards, which isn't unexpected at all, But once you get your Bitcoin on the system, you could send it to an address that you own, and no one would necessarily know that you own that address. You could just send it anywhere you wanted after that. So there's a lot of anonymity in this. You think you have anonymity right now in the current financial system? I think it was the FBI sequestered all the transactional data from Bank of America after the DC January 6th, protests slash riots, whatever you want to call it. I have Bank of America. My transactions were audited against my will. And so no, we don't even have that privacy right now. The government at any point in time, without necessarily due process or anything like that, just say, hey, I want to know your stuff. I want to know what you're doing. And they were doing that to try and figure out who was at the DC protests on January 6th, and Bank of America complied. So all of this code, the protocol that runs Bitcoin, it's all open source. All right, it's all on GitHub. Has been for 10 years. You can see exactly what is going on, exactly what's being voted on. This is a huge, this is a big deal. Being in as a community, everybody contributes to this and votes on it to see where the blockchain goes next, or see where that particular coin goes next. So one error that was made in the episode 227, I believe Dylan or Chance said that Bitcoin in particular was centralized. It's not. But Chance, you did say that others are decentralized, but Bitcoin is definitely decentralized. There's no governing body. There's no single person who just owns the protocol. The community votes on it, what that will be. And I'll give you examples on that to help lay out what that even means. I already talked about how it works 24/7 and transactions post so quickly. Okay. So what is crypto and what is blockchain? What does this even mean? What's going on here? And this is fascinating. So it's just blocks and chains. Okay, what's in a block? A block contains transactions. What are the transactions? So if I send my Bitcoin from point A to point B, let's say I buy my Bitcoin on an exchange, and I send my Bitcoin to a wallet that I own. All right, the blockchain says very well. We'll charge you a small fee to do that, fractions of a penny sometimes a couple pennies, and we'll move that Bitcoin to that wallet. And I'm paying a miner to do this for me. But before I move on to miners, so the blockchain, or the blocks, they're just containing transactions. They also contain a couple other things, which I'll cover in a little bit, but that's the bulk of it. To keep things simple, it's just a ledger. All the blockchain is a database. So keep that in mind too. You could use a shovel to dig a ditch and provide irrigation to a farm, or you could beat somebody over the head with it. The shovel doesn't really care in the same way that the blockchain doesn't care. It's how you use this tool that matters. It's just a ledger. And so what's going on? And this is where things get weird. Let's see if I can explain this one. So there are these miners, and what they're doing is they're adding transactions to a block. And in the Bitcoin blockchain in particular, a block is added to the chain every 10 minutes. Okay, so if you're a miner, you are spending the electricity to keep your computer up and running to add that block to the chain. In order to be the miner who adds that block to the chain, you have to solve a cryptographic puzzle, hence the name crypto. And what is a cryptographic puzzle? Well, it's called a hash function. Now, if you know algebra, a standard function could be like x plus 1. You plug in 1, you get 2. You plug in 2, you get 3. Pretty straightforward. A hash function is you plug in a number and you get an output, no different than the function I mentioned before, but you will never be able to look at the outputs and be able to crack the code on what the function was. Now, if I kept adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and kept getting something that added 1 over and over again to it, I'd be able to reverse engineer it and figure out, oh, that function was x plus 1. But a hash function, mathematically, it's impossible to reverse engineer what the function is. So what's happening is These miners are saying, all right, I'm putting in an input. Let's put in number 3 into this hash function, and I'm getting an output. The blockchain network says, okay, we're playing a game. I'm going to make up a number. Let's just say the number 100. The first person to put in a number into my hash function and get a number out that is less than or equal to the 100, the number I just put out, you win. You get to put in the block. So that's literally playing the lottery from the perspective of the miners of who gets to put the block in. Now, that encourages miners to add as much computing power to whatever they're doing as much as possible. They want as much computing power as possible. And they're just trying to solve these cryptographic puzzles all day long. Now, why would this even make sense? What is going on here, and why was this set up this way? Well, the developers of Bitcoin said we need to make it so developers, because we don't know who it was, we need to make it so the miners pay something up front. And in this case, it's the form of electricity and running your computers. So that way, when they actually get the block, they have every incentive to not break any of the rules, not break any of the protocol, and just add the block as is to the chain. Because if they cheat, they lose the block, and hence the block reward, because you get paid for adding the block. You get paid when you're the one miner who adds that block. And then you continue mining. Every 10 minutes, new block. Well, what is going on with the block reward? Right now, every 4 years, the reward gets cut in half. In 2020, it went down to 6.25 Bitcoin per block. Okay, well, if Bitcoin on average right now in the past, like, if it's gotten over 60,000, but let's just say 50,000 for convenience, $50,000 per coin. That means every 10 minutes, you are paying out almost over $300,000, meaning that you're paying out almost $1.8 million an hour in block rewards. Do you see the financial incentive to be a miner? Okay, but that's just the block reward. That doesn't account for the transaction fees. Tack on another 2 Bitcoin per block, give or take, and you're looking at almost $2.5 million an hour. You do the math on how much that is a day, a year, and so on and so forth. As every 4 years that block reward gets cut in half, the network stops giving you, or the miners, the coin. Miners have the incentive to get more users on the network, because eventually, 100 years from now, there isn't going to be any more Bitcoin being given to miners from the network. Miners will only make money from more users using Bitcoin, from them paying transaction fees. So I wanted to make the case for, like, these miners who are in the business of doing all of this. They would, in the matter of self-interest, they would have no reason to make you want to run away from Bitcoin. They want as many people using Bitcoin as possible. You see why? So this isn't the only case I'm making, but it's the beginning of the case of why I'm saying, look, you got this all turned around. The powers that be aren't, the people who are actually doing all of this is all decentralized anyway. There's no governing body to blow up. There's no one to point a gun at. These miners are all over the planet, all these different countries. Okay, so what? A country or two says, nope, we're banning miners. That doesn't matter. As long as there's a single country, unless the whole world just bans mining. But why would you do that when there's so much money involved? And the reason why there's so much money involved is because there's so much value coming, which I'll make a case for later. Okay, and nodes, by the way, nodes are just basically a catalog of the chain, of the blockchain. So they store the blockchain. Miners are the same thing, but they're the ones who are solving the cryptographic puzzles and then adding them to the network, to the blockchain network. I already said this about cryptos having so much more to offer. So the supply chain implications are vast. So I want to talk about TE food and a problem that they are trying to solve and on the way to solving. So Imagine this problem that has occurred several times in my lifetime. There's an E. coli outbreak in, let's see, the state of Georgia. What will happen is you might have 2 or 3 restaurants where spinach gave some people E. coli. What the FDA does is they say, you know what, everybody in the state of Georgia, just stop using spinach now. Just stop. We have no way to know where it came from. We're done. And then we'll just purge the line with spinach and we'll make sure the next batch is safe. Okay, fair enough. Well, on blockchain, what if you were able to get the farmer to say, hey, I make an entry into the blockchain that I gave my spinach to this delivery truck on this date, transaction, right, on the ledger. And then the delivery truck driver said, hey, I gave this to this restaurant on this date. And this restaurant says, I made this batch of spinach and put it out on this date. And what you see is a chain of custody of exactly where that spinach came from, where it went. So let's say an E. coli outbreak did happen. You don't even need to wait for the FDA to tell you what's safe and what's not. You could go on the blockchain yourself and see. And this is what's so amazing is I believe a lot of companies will be pressured by the public to say, hey, get on, show me, put your supply chain system on the blockchain. Prove to me that you're not using child labor. Prove to me that you're sourcing from those vendors. And yes, there's the issue of like, can you fabricate a lie? And that's where you would have to get everyone to agree that you're fabricating that lie. Because if you said you bought something from the vendor would have to agree to that too. And there's more into that of how you would safeguard against that. But you get the idea. And you can't go back and change it. You can't go back and say, I didn't make that transaction. No, you did. You did. And so you're creating a more I'll say this over and over again, a more transparent and accountable supply chain system. And this is huge. This has so much value. So TE Food is the token that's working on this. They were recently rebranded, though, to the ticker of TONE. And in full disclosure, they were hired by the government to figure out a way to track people who had their vaccines taken. But it's a good tool to use. May disagree with that, the fact that that's even being done. But again, it's all in how you use the shovel. Do you dig the ditch or do you bang somebody over the head with it? And that's for us to choose, right? And so going on, cryptos destroy the audit industry where everything's on the chain. Why do you even need to show up to do an audit? And certainly, what in concerning what you have on the blockchain? No, you just you run the queries to look at exactly what you need to on the blockchain. If you're an auditor, done. That just changes everything. Eliminates the needs for escrow accounts. Usually you have to put money into an account and have an arbiter take care of like a transaction for you. Smart contracts can handle all of that. They have been handling a lot of that now. This is part of where Ethereum broke off from Bitcoin. So Vitalik, I have his name on another slide, but I remember his first. Vitalik was the inventor of Ethereum. He wanted to use Bitcoin. He wanted to add smart contracts to Bitcoin, but the community said, nope, we don't want to do that. We want to keep Bitcoin simple. You wanted to go do all your fancy stuff, go do it on another chain. Well, blockchain's free world, and you can go do whatever you want. So Vitalik went over to and started creating the Ethereum network, and there's so many things going on there. So much more advanced than Bitcoin, where that has so much more value. Though Bitcoin is useful in and of itself for what it's trying to achieve. Yeah, and so much more that's in development and is yet to be created. I don't think this will fully hit the mainstream until like 2030 or so. And I don't think we'll see the full technological evolution of everything until probably like 2050. But I'm just making guesses here, but that's just my take. So Luna was a case study I wanted to mention. Luna was an example of a token that was servicing citizens on Mongolia. So I think it was like 2/3 of the population in Mongolia didn't have bank accounts for whatever reason. So because of that, you couldn't, purchasing things from vendors was a little bit more inconvenient. Obviously, taking out loans was a no-go. Well, Luna came in and said, you know what, we're going to set up a project where, they may not have bank accounts, but they have smartphones. And what they said was, well, we're going to make it so you can do transactions for a fraction of the price compared to Visa and MasterCard. And vendors love this because they make more money. And it actually became quite popular, quite successful. And a lot of people in Mongolia started to use this stuff, this Luna token. And is an excellent case study where it was so successful in Mongolia that Luna announced that they are going to expand into other regions. Now, I'm very familiar with this one because I invested in it myself. Got into it about October or so of last year, got out this March. Got out way too early. I'll add that. I might have some screenshots on the screen to show you. I think it was almost like a 2,000% gain in like less than 6 months. But it was based off of something that had real value. It was an untapped market. Banks weren't servicing these people. So then you had a better service, a more available service that was superior that came in and provided value to the situation. I mean, people definitely wanted it and they used it. It's quite successful. And of course, look into all of this your own. And even while I was owning the Luna, I may have had that in the screenshot too, I was able to stake it, basically give it to other miners, and they were able to utilize that, and I was able to gain interest off of that. So I had more Luna tokens by the end of it. But yeah, that's just an interesting case study of what can happen. Okay, so this idea of, I have about 3 slides left, third to last slide. So how can the powers that be use the blockchain to gain control over people? Well, these decentralized networks are quite literally the decentralization of power. If the whole idea about power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, this is going in the opposite direction. Okay, you're actually having communities, not board members of a company, nothing like that. Communities of people who are actually involved making decisions on where they want to go. There's complete transparency and an inability to manipulate historical data which prevents malfeasance. I've already discussed that earlier. All the code is open source, like I've said before. And now I'm going to talk to you about, I already talked to you about Ethereum breaking off, but I want to talk to you about Bitcoin Cash. So this is interesting. And I think this will help you understand what's going on a deeper level. So those blocks that were being added to the blockchain, you could only add them in increments of one megabyte at a time. So 1 megabyte worth of transactions. Well, as time went on, Bitcoin, as you know, became more popular, so more people were wanting to add transactions. We have a problem because we don't have enough space in the block to add transactions, which means the fees would skyrocket because then the miners would only take the person who'd pay the highest fee. Okay, so the community and the miners included said we don't want to do that because we want more people to start using Bitcoin. So the developers and the community talked it out, and they came to 2 ideas of a solution where they could go. One idea was very simple and straightforward. It was just like, okay, well then double the size of the block. Instead of 1 megabyte, make it 2 megabytes. And that was sort of, you would have the same problem once more people joined. And then the one that ended up winning was the idea of removing this what's called the signature data. I won't go into details on what that is, but it took up a lot of, like, the majority of the data in the block. So they said, well, we don't technically need this. Let's remove it, and that way we free up more space for the block. Now, what's interesting is half the community said, I don't like that. I want to go with the 2 megabyte block. And the other half said, well, I don't like that. I want to go with the removing the signature. And you know what happened? Both happened. Because in the blockchains are literally like living, breathing things. They're protocols that if a community splits and divides, they fork into 2 different chains, with two different sets of protocols, two different coins. And to this day, you still have Bitcoin Cash being bought and sold on exchanges. It's called Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash is what came out of that fork. And you have the choice as the end user or the miner or whoever to choose Bitcoin Cash over Bitcoin or vice versa. You don't have to follow anything that you don't want to. So I definitely wanted to bring up this example because when it comes to the powers that be trying to control everything, how? How are they going to do that? Even if they got to, over half the community somehow globally, if they made it so Bitcoin sucked and like controlled us, then you just walk away from it. And guess what? The other people who didn't want to go that route, you would go follow them and you go that route. Now, you tell me, why would those miners who tried to screw you over even do that when they're making buku bucks? You see, there's no incentive unless they're being coerced. But do you really have the reach to coerce that many people across the planet? Maybe this could happen. I'm not saying that it can't, and I think that we should keep our eyes out if it does. I'm just not seeing it happen right now. And you can see, now that I've laid this out, it would take a lot of effort to pull that off. A lot of work. So I just wanted to make the case that, yeah, this is very open source. It's not controlling at all. It's like, I think it's the next renaissance in terms of similar to what the internet was. Oh, and before moving on, I forgot to make this point, but I wanted to say to you, let's say a new technology was coming out. And I said, Bill Gates is behind it. And he put a triangle with the all-seeing eye on it as a symbol. And it's called AOL Online. And it ends up being the internet. Well, yeah, that actually happened. And that's where, was the internet all that bad? I mean, yeah, obviously there's ways that the internet are used to try, attempt to control us. But on the whole, I say the internet was a good thing. I certainly wouldn't have found Michael Tessarion's Unslaved podcast without the internet. So that's where I say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that you've applied the same, if you would have applied the same logic to the internet, you wouldn't have got on board. I think what's happened now with Bitcoin or just crypto in general is now that we have the internet, communication is going crazy. If you would have been able to invest in the internet, say pre-2000, you would have been very rich. But nobody knew what was going on. Your normies are like, how are you gonna read it in a magazine? And even if you did, how would you know how good the information is? But I think now what's going on, you're still in the adoption phase. You're still in this early phase where there's so much value coming to the table and so much growth opportunities that, and we're able to see it coming far earlier than expected compared to like the internet, because because information is traveling so quickly. Very fascinating, so we'll see. And time will tell, right? Time will tell if blockchain ends up being more of a force for evil than good. I'm not opposed to the idea that it could be. I'm just saying right now, I don't think that it is. I think that the freedom's going to win on this one, which is great. I hope it does, but we'll see. Time will tell. Okay, so this is the second to last slide, the legitimate risks I wanted to cover. The first one is pure financial risk. I mean, just like investing in any stock, you could put it in today and it just dropped to zero tomorrow, right? That's a legitimate risk. It happens. If you don't do your research and you put your money into something that's useless, you're going to lose everything. So just that alone, that right there is enough of a risk to make you be wary. The end user knowledge gap risk. This is the crypto world is so weird. It is the wild, wild west right now. If I bought some Bitcoin and I tried to send it to my wallet has like this 50-character address. It's alphanumeric. If I got a single character wrong, that means I've sent it to another address and I've lost that money forever. I have no recourse. You think your normie feels safe in that environment where somebody, it's so easy to lose money if you're not paying attention. So there's no safeguards in place, uh, which, that's why I said we're in the growth phase. This is still in its baby steps. The 51% attack. I've kind of touched on this before, where if you get more than 51% of all the computing power for a single coin, you can actually say, nope, I accept your transactions, I block yours. So that can happen, but again, if you think miners are going to adopt that because people want to leave their coin the next day, it's counterproductive for miners in the mining community. Could it happen? Yes, just saying it's unlikely. The quantum computing attack. So the idea that quantum computing could get into a rogue's criminal's hands and they just use it and crack every code for every. This is actually real. I'm not making this up. They could crack every code for every wallet and crack every every exchange instantly like that. And apparently China and Google have both claimed quantum processing capabilities like a couple years ago or a few years ago. So it hasn't happened yet, but it could happen, and it's a very legitimate threat. So on that note, there is a token called QRL, Quantum Resistant Ledger, that is actually fighting. That has a solution to this problem, and it is actually. I only have one computer, and I can only mine one thing. That is the token that I'm mining right now, because I believe in it so much. I believe in like what value it has to offer so much. And what it does is it gives you a unique set of keys. I'll just wrap this up quickly, not be too technical. Every transaction, which requires a lot of work on the back end, but if you have QRL tokens, it does it for you automatically. That's the way they're setting up their business model. And businesses might, if blockchain continues to evolve, they might very well use the quantum resistant ledger as a safeguard against quantum attacks. As weird and bizarre as that sounds, it's like we're really living in the future now, huh? Hacks absolutely can happen. There have been like 3 major hacks so far on main exchanges. And I'm going to wrap up 2 risks into one here. There's also, we've talked about decentralized cryptos. There's also centralized cryptos where a single business owns basically what the protocol will do. So when you put your money into that project's hands, you're basically saying, I trust you not to, betray me. And if they did betray you, you wouldn't have any recourse. I mean, if they're over in like Korea or whatever, what are you going to do? Sue them? It's not going to work. But they have an incentive to not steal from you. And this is very similar to what Michael was bringing up about the Templars not taking people's money after they became the bank, because nobody would use them anymore, nobody would trust them anymore. So in this case study, Binance Coin, which is also a centralized token, got hacked for like $40 million, and believe it or not, they paid back every last penny to everyone who lost something on their exchange. Now, why would they do that? Why would they fork out 40 million like that? Well, because if they didn't, that was such bad PR on them that who would want to even be with Binance Coin anymore? Binance Coin would be useless from that point forward. Nope. What they did instead is they said, we're sorry, we're going to improve our security. Since then, they haven't been hacked. And they gave back all the money to everybody. Well, so now if you hold Binance, anything on the Binance exchange, you have a little bit more of a safe feeling, and they needed to do, they were incentivized to do that, to keep their business model up and running. But the last legitimate risk, of course, EMPs, multiple solar flares, knocking out every node and miner on the planet, all at the same time. If that ever happened, yes, but we'd have bigger problems as well. So I think my message to Chance and Dylan, of course, keep your eyes open for moves to control us. Yeah, I'm not saying that's impossible. I just don't see it happening right now. Like me personally, as I'm investigating the space. The push I think that we're seeing for Bitcoin right now, there's a clear profit motive. I mean, these people want more and more. They want as many users on Bitcoin as they can get, because they're going to make more money. And money goes where it's treated best. If transaction fees are higher on the current financial system and lower on Bitcoin, that's where money's going to flow. If a bank is offering a 2% interest rate on a bank account and another one's offering a 5% interest rate, I put my money in the 5% interest rate. That's just that's how life works. Same corporate tax rate. One country has it at 20%, another has it at 10%. Money flows to the 10%. That's just how that works. That's how I foresee this happening. I think that because there's an adoption period and there's a lag here because people just don't know what Bitcoin is. They don't know what blockchain is. There's still a lot of risk involved. The risks that I just talked about, a lot of unknowns. There could be more risks than I've even mentioned, right? That I'm not even thinking of, right? So it's understandable why you wouldn't want to just dive into the crypto space, for sure. All right, last slide. So what is the future of blockchain technologies? I think it's very bright. I mean, honestly, guys, this is the whole reason why I'm saying this. I think that this is innovation, creativity, abundance. And what I mean by abundance is we're leveraging technology in a way that provides value in ways that I don't think any of us have completely imagined yet. Transparency, accountability. All of these things are coming with blockchain. So why am I critiquing any of this at all? Well, because I felt that this was a message to the enslaved community, coming from episode 227. I'm like, oh, no, you've got it all wrong. I need you to understand that this isn't coming to control you. I think this is a step kind of like the internet. Did the internet bring its, devils with it? Yes, of course. Blockchain probably will too. But keep an eye out for the value. And so you can do a few things here. You can speculate if you chose to, because you think there's value, not just because you're trying to diversify, although that's a good reason to do so, but because there's going to be growth opportunities in the crypto space. You guys critiqued the worthless stuff. Well, but it's not all worthless. There's legitimately useful things coming along here. So you can invest in businesses or technologies that you believe in, that you think will succeed. And I gave you a few examples of ones that I believed in and I've invested in as well. And of course, as these technologies emerge, you'll be able to do it yourself. I mean, imagine getting voting on blockchain. My goodness, and making all that auditable and public record. And there's ways to you can hide user data. You don't show everything, but you could at least show, hey, here's how many registered voters we have. Here's how many people have voted. You get the idea. There's ways to leverage blockchain to do voting right. So yeah, so many things that we could push forward with this technology. So yeah, time will tell if these technologies are even embraced by the public at large. Because if they're not, all these coins will eventually become worthless. Or if maybe the architects of control will find a way. We won't know, but I'll definitely keep an eye out. I'm conspiracy nut number one. Well, maybe not not around you guys, but I'm up there and I'm looking, for sure. Yeah, so like I said, I predict a mixture of both outcomes, but I lean towards the side that'll be beneficial, kind of like the internet was. So I wanted to cover two more ideas here, and the nail down risk one more time. Diversification, diversification, diversification. Putting maybe 5% of what you have into crypto is more than enough. More than enough for sure. If nothing else, just to learn how it all works, just getting into it a little bit and understanding how it works. I think that'll help you understand it more in and of itself. And lastly, my personal story. Why do I invest in the blockchain? Well, I want financial freedom. Right now, I work 40 hours a week, and I have an 8-month-old daughter. I'm pretty busy, and in my free time, I study. I, try and learn as much as I can. I take care of my body. I do what I can on that level. But, I want consciousness to be my full-time business. But in order to do that, I got to get my crap together. And I look at all of this emerging technology as true value. I mean, for everybody. I think this will lift us all up. There's a reason why, I think we have it bad, okay, on one level. But we're living a little bit better than, materially speaking, than the peasants did 400 years ago. And I think that overall, um, we're headed in a direction where abundance is coming our way because of knowledge, because of technology. But again, I don't need to tell you guys this. Technology is what you make of it. You could do evil with it, and you could do good with it. So I think where this is more decentralized, I think there's a great opportunity to do true good with it. So I think that wraps everything up. It's been about an hour or so. I didn't mean it to be this long. Um, I hope that my message was received well and respectfully. Um, and thank you for listening. Um, and I hope that I've provided some insight or some knowledge here as well. Thanks everybody.